Yo, what it do, YouTube? It's your boy Marcus. We are back with another video, and today I'm going to be explaining to you guys why I think the Colts will win the AFC South this next coming up year, man. Next year is going to be a big year for us. We got a tough schedule. We already know that situation, but when you actually look at the overall teams in the division going into next season, I know you're probably going to be wondering, this guy's crazy, or you're going to give me a good reason why other teams might win it, but let's take an overall perspective of why I think the Colts might win the AFC South next year. Just hear me out. Just hear me out. Now, I might be wrong, I might be right, but you don't have to agree with me because I want to hear your point at the end of the video. So let's hop into it. So, the AFC South. Let's start with the Houston Texans, right? A dismal franchise. No one knows what the general message or what perception the Texans are trying to bring out going into next season. Now, we know that for Colts fans, we know that they're probably rebuilding and trying to figure out certain situations, what's going on in the organization. So, looking like winning for the Texans might not be in the clear view. Now, of course, some players might come out and play harder than others because we know they're competitive, and that's what the Texans do. They fight whenever they don't need to fight, and then they lose easy games. So, yes, when it comes to the Texans, we know they're probably going to be the worst team in the division going into next year. Being as though how their schedule looks and how their roster looks is not fully complete. They have some guys there, but overall, in general, the roster does not compete for the AFC South. So they're probably going to have the worst record in the AFC South going into next year, so we won't really worry about them. The next team I want to talk about is the Tennessee Titans. Now, of course, Tennessee Titans been on a run for years now, and most people don't understand is when is it going to end, right? This year, I think, might be the year they take a step back. When you look overall at the Tennessee Titans, of course, you got Derrick Henry. But durability and the way he's been used is going to wear and tear him. It's going to wear and tear him, man. This dude is one of the best running backs in the NFL. We get that. But, durability isn't always guaranteed. Not wishing anything on the player, but the way that the Tennessee Titans use him is going to affect his play in the future. And I think next year is going to be one of them years when they take a step back and Ryan Tannehill is going to have to become more of a quarterback than what he did in the past years. Now, is Ryan Tannehill bad? Absolutely not. He's a very good quarterback. But when you look at the weapons for the Tennessee Titans and what they lost in this offseason, do you really think that offense can work without Derrick Henry? I don't think so. They lost a few pieces on the offense, including one of their premier targets in Jonnu Smith. And then they lose a second piece with Corey Davis. Yes, go ahead and mention A.J. Brown. We get that. But that's one receiver compared to a whole offense. You have Derrick Henry, but you have A.J. Brown. And that's pretty much it when you look at the rest of the depth for the Tennessee Titans. Now, when it comes to their defense, yes, they added edge rush. We get that. Doesn't matter. When you have an edge rush, of course they can bring pressure on the quarterback, but they also lost one of their key safeties in this offseason. Then they lost a few linebackers. Then they lost a few corners as well, and which is one of the issues for the Tennessee Titans is the secondary. So when you go into next year, the Tennessee Titans is not a complete roster. It's not. Now, is that saying that Tennessee Titans stink or are they going to have a terrible record? Not at all. I think the Titans can still win games, but when it comes to the AFC South, you have to play the same team 2 times a year. And I think that when it comes to a certain amount of games in their schedule, I don't think the Tennessee Titans will have the best record coming out of the AFC South. I really don't. I think this is the year they take a step back after their long run of actually winning and competing further than the Colts. I think this is the year the Titans take that step back and have to reevaluate processes. They have to go out there and get more weapons. Maybe in the middle of the year or going into next season, off season, they're going to have to get some more pieces because I don't think they're a complete team like they were last year or the year before. I think they took a step back this offseason. Now, they did acquire some pieces in the draft, but for the overall perception of what they're looking like, I think they're going to take a step back. Just simple as that. So let's go ahead and hop into the biggest question mark of the AFC South, the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? Jacksonville Jaguars draft quarterback Trevor Lawrence. They draft the running back that played with Trevor Lawrence in college. They got Urban Meyer. They go get Tim Tebow as a tight end. Looks like he's going to be a receiving version of a tight end core. He's pretty short, not really built like that, so we don't know what he's going to do in Jacksonville. Then they go and add defense in the offseason. We get that. They add another young corner to their cornerback core, what they got already. Jacksonville Jaguars. No one really knows the true identity of what the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to do next year. When you look at the Titans, it's Derrick Henry. When you look at the Texans, it's nothing. When you look at the Colts, it's run by committee. Run first is the identity for the Indianapolis Colts. So when you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, what is the true identity they're going to use to try to beat teams? No one really can give me a good answer. Now, of course, maybe some content creators of the Jacksonville Jaguars fan base, they can help me with that situation. But from my standpoint of where I view the Jacksonville Jaguars, no one knows their true identity of what they're going to be doing next year with a number one pick coming out of the draft. Now, Trevor Lawrence could be one of the best rookies in the NFL going into next season at quarterback. You know, kind of like the perception of how Herbert performed last year. Herbert was very underrated going into the Chargers as a quarterback, but he's really good and he's flourished. He showed promise. He has the arm strength and he's mobile. Just like Trevor Lawrence, I think Trevor Lawrence is mobile and has good arm strength as well. And if the system works perfectly with Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars offense, I think it'll be a good scene in Jacksonville. But you know, they are rookies and it does take a little experience. This is not college. So the whole speed of the game is totally different from what the college feel is. So it's probably going to take a little while for the Jacksonville Jaguars to adjust to become a winning team in the AFC South. That's on my view for the Jaguars and why I think it's a big question mark going into next year of how they probably won't be the AFC South leaders, which goes to my last point. The Indianapolis Colts. But before I say that, I had another thing about Jacksonville Jaguars. Their defense, right? Their defense, they added weapons on defense, right? And we know Saxonville back in the day was a really big problem for Jacksonville, and they were really good, which was a problem for us because of how good they were getting to the quarterback. But they did add pieces on defense, so that is a good sight for them. But let's see how it really works out for Jacksonville. We don't know how their defense is going to really adjust with these young corners. They got some promising safeties. Linebacker core is pretty good, but their defensive line is nice. I like the defensive line for Jacksonville. So we should see how it works out. Like I said, this is no knock on any teams. I don't have time for beef through AFC South until the season starts. When the season starts, yes, you can talk all the trash you want, but I'm not here to talk trash. I'm just being completely honest about my view on these teams in the AFC South. Now let's hop into the Colts. This is why I think the Colts will win the AFC South, right? So you look at the toughness of the schedule. If you're telling me we're playing tough teams all year, and then we have to go back to the AFC South and play teams that aren't fully complete, in my opinion, roster-wise, I think we have the best roster in the AFC South. Roster-wise. And this is not being biased. On paper, being completely honest, I think we have the best roster in the AFC South. So when it comes to competing for the AFC South title, I think we have the best chance in winning it out of all the teams. Now, you might mention Carson Wentz being a question mark because I question marked all these other teams in the AFC South, and I totally agree with you because nobody really knows how Carson Wentz is going to perform going into next season. I don't even know. I can't give you a good answer. I can give you motivation or a good speech of why I think he'll perform because, you know, he has history of being a good quarterback. He has 2 years of being a terrible quarterback, but you can't really put all the blame on Carson Wentz's bad performance. Now, of course, he has some dismal throws and unacceptable passes, but when you look at the Eagles roster, you can't tell me that a quarterback can go into the Eagles organization with the roster he had for the last 2 years and be successful. You can't tell me that. So when you look at Carson Wentz with the roster he has on offense, a good offensive line, I might add, what the Eagles did not have, you have a perception of he could do it if he wants to be that type of quarterback again. He has a good ceiling and promise for the Indianapolis Colts offense. And that's why I think we can win in the AFC South. We don't need Carson Wentz to go out there and throw Aaron Rodgers MVP-like numbers. We don't, because we run first anyway. We're a run-first team, and he stated this before when he signed with the Colts, he stated he knows the identity of the Indianapolis Colts. So he knows what it takes. He doesn't have to force passes. Now, when the game happens, does that mean he's going to agree with the decisions? No, he might switch it up. But we know guys like Phillip Rivers back last year, he adjusted plenty of times because he knew what the defenses were. Now, of course, all the passes weren't there, but he did improve at the end of the year. But I think Carson Wentz training with the guys during the offseason, and which Rivers didn't do last year, I think this just shows more promise and trust you can have in Carson going into next season. Like I said again, This doesn't mean anything. This doesn't mean anything about Carson going in and actually struggling, because we actually seeing progression. So I like that. Let's keep moving. Going into the defense for the Indianapolis Colts. The defense for the Colts is loaded. We kept all our guys, which is a bonus looking into next year. We kept all our guys. We brought them back. We drafted an edge rusher, which was a big problem for us. So going into next season, I can't see why we can't win the AFC South. I can't see why we can't, because it's open. The AFC South is open. No team is guaranteed of winning this division. This AFC South is wide open for anybody to win. The Jaguars, the Titans, or the Colts. We're not counting the Texans because we don't know what they're doing. But out of the three teams, it's wide open for anyone to win it if they want to. But I think with us having a tough schedule, I think it's going to mold us into wanting to win an AFC South title. And then that will push us into going into the playoffs because of the tough schedule. But it is what it is at the end of the day. But I would love to get your points of why do you think the Colts may win it and why you think the Colts won't win the AFC South. Let me get your whole thoughts on the perception of the AFC South, team by team. Let me know, who do you think is going to win it. Until next time, this is Marcus, and you've been Culture Shock.